dears, if you're new here, hi, my name is Sydney, my pronouns are they, them, and I have a friend today. We're gonna talk about, this is my first in-person collab, I'm really excited about it. And today we're gonna talk about disability and privilege, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be like slightly autism-centric, but not entirely, because disability is wider than autism. And yeah, would you like to introduce yourself, my dear?
My name is Earl. I use they, them pronouns. I am autistic who has mid-high support needs, I think. Mostly non-speaking or minimally speaking. They mean the same thing to me. I am multiply disabled other than autism. From physical to neurological to psych stuff. Although autism makes me get stuck in autism land and forget about the rest. I am multiply marginalized, queer, trans, and a person of color. I have complicated relationship with my race and culture.
Very good. Do you like my little, I made a little face. I would also like to say I also get stuck in autism land because the thing is like, I have, I think 35 diagnoses at this point, and I can't distinguish any of them from anything else. So it's just like I exist as this blob of a human. And so when I find out something that might relate to autism, I'm like, yeah, it checks out. But then it also like, who knows? It could be related to any of the other 34 things that I experience. And I have no idea. I am just a disaster. So we're happy to have Earl. Earl's the best. Earl is one of the social media people, I think is how I'm gonna put it, for my show. You should know my show at this point. If you don't, it's my thesis. We're making world history. It's bananas. I have links about that in the description. But if you've seen it on the Curious Incident social media, we've been doing Fact Fridays every week that like go through things about disability. This one is the one that's helping me to write those. We're working on those together. And so we had one a couple weeks ago specifically about disability and privilege, and I wanted to make a video of it because, in case you don't know, I'm doing a little series for the first 2 weeks of January that is specifically uplifting BIPOC and specifically Indigenous as best I can stories in disability to try to make up for my non-consensual trip to Hawaii. So, you know, we're doing what we can. And so, yeah, I thought we could make a video about privilege and it would be great and amazing. Also, for like our first, I guess, question that we do, or like, we just have a list of notes that we're just gonna kind of go through. I'm going to not edit out the time it takes for Earl to type so that you can like get used to how long it takes for this lovely device to function, but also in general just for the speed of like, how do I phrase this properly? I don't want to edit out this because it's important for like everybody to get used to, but I also know that for a lot of people's auditory processing, things do need to move a little bit faster, and yeah, so, and also attention span, go burr. I knew exactly what you were gonna say. I saw attention span G and I was like, go burr. I know how you function. So yeah, so that's why I'm doing that. It's important to get used to silence and taking time for communication. That is normal, that is typical, and we need to get used to that. But I'm gonna be editing it out a little bit. I'm conscious of that. Great. Okay, the show that we are working on, or I'm directing and you're working on, is the world's first all neurodivergent cast and crew production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Really freaking cool. But we've also acknowledged, right, that just based on the makeup of our colleges, based on the makeup of who is safe to be out of the closet as neurodivergent, our cast is very white, late diagnosed, specifically autistic and or ADHD, and how that doesn't necessarily represent the entirety of neurodiversity at all whatsoever, and we cannot claim to even try to do that. We are just here to like we're not being like, we have fixed the neurodivergent problem, because no. It's more of a, hey, we're doing a thing to get eyes on the situation, and that's kind of the bare base minimum. So we said specifically in our Fact Friday a while ago, most of our cast and crew are late diagnosed, have lower support needs that allows us to live relatively independently, speak, and do not have any or significant intellectual disability. And so yeah, I was thinking we could start by talking a little bit about like what disability and madness is palatable for who's, because we go to Mount Holyoke College, which is a predominantly white institution, and that means that even though obviously we're predominantly white, we're also predominantly able-bodied. We are predominantly a lot of things. There's a lot of privilege that comes from going to a college like this. And so we acknowledge that the people who are going to be disabled that we would put on our show are going to be a specific type, for lack of a better word, of disability and madness. I think there's like, we like to think of madness and stuff as invisible disabilities, but they're not. Like, they're not invisible at all. And that comes through in job interviews, that comes through in college interviews, and depends on who's allowed in what spaces. I really like watching your brain process take place in front of me. It's wonderful. Wait, does the help button switch the pages? Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Sorry, I'm learning about this just as we're going. I'm enjoying this. Also, you need to charge it. You're stressing me out. I refuse to see this 37% going on here. I always forget that the English language, it is actually correct to put that and that in a row, and that is grammatically correct, and that bothers me.
I think the disability and neurodivergent community and disability justice advocacy, there is the narrative that neurodivergent, and in particular to this conversation, autism, are invisible disabilities, and that is true for some people. A lot of us forget that that is not true for all people.
Definitely. And like, when it comes to, right, a big part of getting into a college is that you are usually expected to interview. And in an interview, which is a very stressful situation, and typically a lot of neurodivergent people, for lack of a better way to put it, show their neurodivergency more in stressful situations because we might need to stim more, we might need to move more, we may have a harder time forming sentences, etc., etc. That is going to show up more, and then the other person's going to be like, oh, they don't fit the vibe of our campus, so we're not going to let them in. And so it is a lot more visible than you think. And also, like, there's the element of, there's been a lot of discussions lately in the community about the new Netflix show Wednesday, and how everybody is like, oh my gosh, she's so weird, she's so quirky, we love to see it, when at the same time they see those people walking down the street and they bully them for how they act. And that is also the visibility of neurodivergency that we don't think about. We just think that they're weird or creepy or whatever, and we don't think further about that. My channel is clean, so we're gonna have to take out that language. We almost had a bad word. I mean, I would have just bleeped it, but... The amount of editing I have to do for the Curious Incident content that Marcy films, because I, as a director, swear like a sailor. And I'm like, this is fine because I forget there's cameras on. And then I go to edit the footage later and I'm like, oh no, that's not usable at all. It's fine. We're good. It's all good. I like how you're writing a full essay. You're doing great.
I think even in any marginalized community, the most visible people in that community is going to hold relatively the most privilege. So think white, non-disabled, lower support needs, more palatable, etc. That is true for the disability justice advocacy community as well. I think when the community talk about visible disabilities, They think what makes all disability visible are mobility aids and other visible aids like AAC, and yeah, that certainly makes it visible. Coming as someone who uses any aids, we forget that that is not the only thing that makes it visible. Someone can use zero external visible aid and still be visibly disabled.
Yes, for sure. I've talked before in this channel about, because I work as a service dog trainer, and I will have my own service dog for my own needs at some point in my life, but I don't have 20K right now, or a career that is solid enough for me to be able to have a mobility aid or a medical aid that is going to potentially destroy my career. Just due to discrimination. It's not going to mess with how I do my job. But when I am training a service dog, people start to actually like respect accessibility needs and start to, you know, make life easier for me. And I'm like, wow, it's almost like now that I'm visibly disabled, you're actually accommodating, even though I express the same exact needs in different ways when I don't have a service dog. And that is wildly frustrating. Oh, I had another thought. I'm gonna say that while you're typing. Ooh, I always forget I have bowls right there. Another thing is like, when it comes, we're gonna end up talking about race shortly, probably, because that's just where the conversation always goes, and that's where it always should go. But there's also like who is safe, for not even lack of a better word, that is the right word. Who is safe being out? Who is safe being more visibly disabled? For example, if I am walking around, I don't know, downtown New York City, and I'm flapping my hands and having a tic attack, people are gonna look at me and be like, oh, that person's kind of weird and quirky, because usually I am a non-binary person, but I often come across as very femme-passing. And so they'd be like, oh, like this weird artsy child, whatever. But then if another person, say a black man, were to act the exact same way, other people would see that as dangerous. And also, like, even a black man saying that he's autistic, as opposed to me saying that I'm autistic, comes across with a very different image for people and a very different feeling of what people feel is like, what they're comfortable with. And that means that I, as a white femme person, have a lot more privilege in the sense of literal safety. And honestly, like, on some level, I try to use that safety and privilege to help normalize things so that when other people without that safety and privilege do those things, they're safer. Like, I have a tendency whenever I'm in public to just like stim as aggressively as humanly possible, because I know that usually it's not going to directly hurt me, but it could help somebody else down the line. And again, because, you know, our cast is mostly white, and a big part of that is because our college is mostly white, but also because the politics of like who is comfortable being outed as neurodivergent, and who is comfortable being outed as disabled is typically white people. And that's an interesting thing to acknowledge and discuss. I just realized, is that a horn button on your wheelchair? I'm sorry, this is so important. That is not a horn. That is an angry beep. I do not like that. I really wanted it to do like a kind of like a clown car. I'm sorry. I totally just derailed us. I would also like you to know that Earl's wheelchair is pink and motorized, and both of those things are equally important to me. And I think that we should like wait, what if we put goose stickers? What if we just covered it in goose stickers? I think that's better than the galaxy paint idea. Arts and crafts night. Anyway, but in the sense of who's comfortable being out, who's safe being outed, who is less likely to have their career exponentially suffer by them being outed as disabled and or neurodivergent, that is going to be, unfortunately based in the society we live in, going to be the white light diagnosed people. And so that is why, a very large reason of why most of our cast is that, because of that. And also, like, when it comes to neurodiversity, there's also a level of safety of what neurodivergency you claim. Like people claiming, you know, I just forgot everything. Oh, anxiety, depression, ADHD, right? Like those are like the ones that like, if you have, people are like, okay, whatever. If you say you have autism, it makes a lot of people pause. If you say that you have schizophrenia or DID or BPD, like all like those things, that makes people, there's a level of safety for different versions of being out and what things you are out as. And that's why a lot of autistic people know they're autistic but prefer to just say they have, you know, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, and anxiety. And so it's also very interesting of like, we represent a very small portion of neurodiversity, and a large part of that is because it's not safe to be out as those other parts of neurodiversity. Those parts might be in our cast and crew. We haven't talked about it because I don't want to out anybody, but it's also an interesting thing to acknowledge. Again, a beautiful essay. You are more eloquent than I will ever be.
I think it's also important to frame this conversation around visible versus invisible disability. This is dynamic for some people. Some can switch between visibly and invisible, but for some people, this switching isn't always a choice. I have met many invisible disabled people who think that being visibly disabled or higher support needs are a privilege because it gets other people to take you more seriously and you get more support. While people who are invisibly disabled or low support needs, or late diagnosed, are ignored and have to internalize their struggles. But the issue is visibly disabled people don't also get support either. We also get doubts and we don't get believed. Because we are most visible and most identifiable, we face disproportionately more threat to violence. Etc. Visibility isn't always good, especially in a violent, ableist, racist world.
Yes. So I think the next thing that you did a nice little segue into the fact that the world isn't nice to disabled people. Period. We know this. Great. You should know this at this point if you've existed on my channel for more than 7 seconds. But the thing that we've had a lot of discussions about is the in-community ableism that is frankly a bigger problem. Because there's a lot of politics of people being like, you can't claim that identity because I declare that you do not experience this, and so therefore you can't like explore that part of your identity. Like I declare that you are not autistic, so you can't stim, for example, when that person could be autistic, or they could just be experimenting with stimming and not know, or they could be any other things. Like we shouldn't be gatekeeping labels and stuff or outing people, because disability, just like queerness, just like anything else, is an identity, and it is something that has real impact on your life. And for safety reasons, we you know, some people need to stay in the closet. And I get that you may be, you know, really proud about your, like I'm really proud about my identities, and I talk about them a lot, but there are also some identities that I don't talk about on this channel, and I don't plan to, and I'm gonna stay happily in the closet for a very long time probably about them, because I am safer that way. And that's okay, and there's no shame in that, because safety comes before anything else. Because yes, and also, like, we've also complained about this a lot before. I'm gonna make a video at some point about about the cesspool that is autism and neurodivergent and disabled TikTok. Ooh. Yeah. That is coming at some point, but it's gonna be down the line, because it's one of those things I keep trying to research and then I just get so angry that I need to put it away. So maybe that'll get done over winter break, we'll see. Anyway, there is this thing in which everybody has social media, and they think that once they've claimed an identity, they can suddenly be an activist about it, and that's fine. Like, when you're a queer person, you're allowed to be a queer activist, you're allowed to, I don't know, go to pride marches and all that kind of stuff. But the issue is people aren't doing the work or the research that it actually takes to be an activist. They're just like, oh my God, I experienced this one thing and I'm gonna film about it on TikTok and be like, every autistic person experiences this thing, when that thing that they're saying is just like a white, you know, like low support needs. Like it's very, very specific and very hyper specific. And It's how we have some of the most popular autistic TikTok creators doing racist stuff by accident. Like, it just, or not by accident, I don't want to assume. But it's frustrating. We call it baby neurodivergent, kind of like baby gay. Like, right when you first come out of the closet, you're like, I know everything about being a gay person. I can speak for the whole community and whatever, and then inevitably say like biphobic and transphobic stuff without even realizing it. Until you start to do the research, you start to connect with the community, you start to learn more and realize that there's so much more around that identity than just what you are experiencing yourself. And I will be honest, like early on my channel, I probably did a lot of the same things. I don't watch past I don't look at my old videos for a reason. But there is a level of awareness that you need to have and research that you need to do before you can just, you know, film yourself and put it on the internet. And it's frustrating because, like, I am on TikTok. I mostly just do media reviews, but somebody's gonna look at my media reviews and they're gonna look at something from somebody who just got diagnosed last week, out of the, I don't know, and they weren't expecting it or whatever, and Googled some stuff and then filmed it and not realize the difference and the nuance between well-researched information. Like, I have read over 150 books about disability advocacy. Not saying that you can learn a whole lot by experience, and lived experience is so important, but it's the difference between this is my lived experience and I want to share it with the world versus, oh my gosh, did you know that all people of this identity experience this one thing? And it's like, that's not how that works. And yeah, like, you should be an activist for things. Activism is important, and we should, the bigger our community is, the more people that are standing up for stuff, the better. However, you also can't just willy-nilly do it. Like, you need to actually put thought behind that and whatever. And that is how we're getting so much gatekeeping and so much, this identity looks like this and you cannot be part of this identity. So much outing of people, and so much just toxic behavior that we don't love to see. This essay has paragraphs. There was an enter hit. I just looked and I was like, wow, it's pretty. I'll let you say all the... Oh, and also the whole, like, I can use these words because I'm disabled thing. When people are just suddenly like, oh my God, I'm so OCD. And they're like, oh, but I can say that because I have ADHD. And I'm like, but no. That's not how that works. Nice try. It's like being a lesbian, like, it's like being a cis lesbian and saying that you can now use the T slur because you're part of the community, so you get it. Like, just, that's not how that works. And also, for the record, I'm not gonna use, like, even as a trans person, I don't want to use the T slur. And there's definitely people who are using the R slur in the disabled community who are like, I can reclaim this. And I'm like, no, you can't. And also, you shouldn't, because this is not something that can be... This is not, if that term becomes reclaimed, it's going to be reclaimed in maybe 50 years is when we can start reclaiming that. It is not a now thing. Yeah, I just, that frustrates me the most. When people are like, I have one disability, so I can actually use slurs and make jokes about all disabilities, and it's okay now. Especially if that person is in a privileged group of disability. Because everything's intersectional. Everything's intersectional. Yes, yes. I'm also working on a video about institutionalization, but that's gonna take time.
Some people call this lateral ableism, and I have some reservations about this term because lateral implies kind of horizontal and equal, when that is not often the case. Autistic people without intellectual disability distancing themselves from people with intellectual disabilities, autistic or not. You see, it's not equal, it's not lateral, It's from someone who has relatively more privilege to someone who is more marginalized. Or someone who has low support needs implying or directly stating high support needs people are the reason why we aren't being taken seriously. Or people who lose speech saying that just because they can't speak sometimes, they fully understand what it's like to be non-speaking all the time, unable to speak at all. I think people don't realize activism takes many work. Activism is active work and continuous education. It's not as simple as holding a marginalized identity, marginalized experience. You need to constantly reflect on your own privilege, your own internalized ableism, internalized racism, constantly keep up with new knowledge, etc. On topic of I-word, I see many autistic people say they can reclaim it because they are autistic and they have been called that, when historically and even now it is a term used against people with intellectual disabilities, forcibly institutionalizing and sterilizing them.
Yeah. Yes, correct. I definitely, I had a thought and it died. It's gone. It just flew away like a little butterfly. Yeah, no, it's definitely, I agree. It is not lateral ableism because it is very much in the same way, like I've talked a lot about with the queer community and talked about with, I made a video called like why disability isn't in the DEI movement, and why it needs to be and why there's issues and why I'm concerned about the neurodivergent movement. I'm concerned about a lot of movements. There's this, all discrimination kind of on some level boils down to disability, right? Like we've seen that women have in history and in the present day been discriminated against because people think that women like are hysterical and can't think rationally and are on their periods and all of these things that they use to be like, your brain isn't sound so we can't we can't trust you and you're not worthy of existing. We've seen that with mental illness equated with race. And we've seen this with everything else. And I think in my DEI video, I specifically talked about how everything is relegated to physical disability and intellectual disability, like the whole disability category. But the more that I reflect upon that, it's really just all relegated down to intellectual disability on some level. And so the thing is, right, is that when we see movements that have finally been able to separate themselves from that view of, for lack of a better way to put it, insanity or anything, or like disability, they immediately go, cheers, and then run in the opposite direction as fast as they possibly can. And so that's why the queer community is so like just inaccessible. A big part of that, at least in my mind, is because we finally got out of the DSM. We aren't disabled anymore, and now we need to separate ourselves from that identity. And we've seen that with lots of other marginalized groups as well, and that creates a bigger problem because, first of all, that just dumps more stuff on top of the disability community, but it also isn't helping anybody to make their lives better, just in general. And so I'm watching the neurodivergent movement also try to be like, yeah, but we're just like everybody else. We're not impaired, and run in the opposite direction of disability. When what we really need to be doing is saying, yeah, but we are part of that community, and also that is not inherently bad, and we should be connecting with that. And I don't want to be like, we should all hold hands and sing around the campfire together because everybody should just be friends and that's how we fix, oppression. But I'm not saying that, because that's not how, this is way more nuanced than that. But I do think that there's a lot of privilege right now and a lot of people trying to fracture and separate this movement that can't afford to be separated. And there's a difference between like, this is my affinity group within this larger affinity group within this larger affinity group. And this is my teeny tiny section of the world, and I would like it to be separated from the rest of them because they're dragging us down and they're making our activism harder, because that is not how that works. And we can't just keep trying to build power and break down oppression by oppressing other people, because that just inherently is not helpful for anybody, anywhere at all. Yes. Aspie supremacy. And also the whole, like, disability is my superpower, and if it's not yours, then there's something wrong with you. And I'm like, can we stop saying there's things wrong with people as an insult, first of all? And second of all, like, there's nothing wrong with having things, like, wrongness is just I don't want to be like, everything's arbitrary and let's throw all categorical systems out the window, but I also am, like, diagnoses exist for you to understand yourself and not to put other people into teeny tiny boxes, because that makes it easier for you to understand the world.
I've seen autistic people make TikToks that say, quote unquote, F it, are autistic people just smarter? Nowadays, many people in the autistic community is aware of the Nazi history behind the term Asperger's, so that makes them think they're immune to Aspie supremacy, when in reality they are regurgitating Aspie supremacy.
Yes. It's almost like you can take a word out of your language, but you can't take the idea out of your head. And maybe we should actually be looking for the root causes and not the everything else. In the same way that with everybody's just like, ban ABA, ABA is bad, without all of the nuance. There is so much nuance. So anyway, the last little section I have here is like, how can we be more intersectional, understand our privilege? And then I'll just let you, like, if you want to plug anything that you, I don't know. So what I wrote down here is like, how can we be more intersectional and understand our privilege in the work that we do as activists, right? And even just as human beings, you don't have to be an activist to do these things. And just humans should do these things. This shouldn't be activism. This should just be regular life on some level. But continuously acknowledge that my experience and the experience of my cast and crew for this production does not represent the entire neurodivergent and disabled community, because we don't at all, not in the slightest. We are very privileged in the small, teeny tiny amount of people that exist on this campus that fit into that category, that have been willing to out themselves, to put themselves in this show, and I'm really excited about it, but that is a very small subsection of the community. And also, like, us by doing the show have not fixed the problem at all whatsoever. This is just a small step to be like, oi, there's a problem, so that people will start to pay attention to it. We have not. This is the first step in a gazillion. Center marginalized voices, specifically BIPOC, non-speaking, higher support needs voices. Yes. Recognize that we're working in a system of categorizing humans that is fundamentally broken and flawed. I've ranted about this a lot before because I am working on, I was about to say decolonizing my mind, which, yes, but that also sounds so like, I'm an activist and I want to, like, anyway. But like, remembering that the systems that we exist within are a mess. And so when we look at our world, we need to start to try to look at it separate from those systems, which is very, very freaking difficult and very overwhelming as well. Which I think is specifically why the autism community or autistic community is so bad at this, because nuance and change is difficult for the way that our brains tend to function, but it is important and it's crucial and we need to be doing more of that. Constantly reflect on who's included, who is excluded, and being aware of our implicit biases. I think that speaks for itself. And also make sure that we're using the word neurodiversity intersectionally. I've also talked about this before. People see the word neurodiverse and usually just think autism, ADHD, and it's just a catch-all for those two. And it's not. It includes dyspraxia, dysgraphia, dyslexia. I think that's all the dysias. All of the dissociative disorders, PTSD, all the personality disorders, dyscalculia. I missed a dysia. That's what I'm calling them now. It's the dysia category. You're welcome. It's just so, there's so much that exists within neurodiversity. Oh, autism. I meant to say anxiety and I thought autism. Anxiety, depression, like there's just so many other things that fit in the neurodiverse umbrella. And we need to recognize that. And that's why I'm trying to, like, there's a movement that's reclaiming the word madness, and I'm still not quite sure how I feel about that, but it does have different connotations and ones that I think should be brought into the community. Another term that exists that is becoming more popular is mental disability. I'm trying to keep my brain more around that because that also doesn't hold the same connotations, and I like it. And it connects us directly to the disability community, which I think some activists need to remind themselves of. So yeah, and acknowledge that our space, in the sense of the neurodiverse space, in the sense of my show, includes so many neurodivergencies and more neurodivergencies than we even know from like the surface level, because people haven't outed themselves, and they don't need to, and we don't want them to, because we shouldn't need to. We should just make things accessible, because in regards to like making classrooms accessible, it's not actually that hard. I've spent the last 6 months researching it and making a tutorial for you guys, which you can watch up here, but it's not that difficult. So what say you? Yes? Look at all the gooses just being gooses. Oh, little gooses. Fun story. Are you ready to go? I was about to tell a story about the geese. We have a lot of geese in our campus, and so they hired and so they hired it's called like Wild Goose Chase New England, and they're like herding dogs that are trained specifically to herd geese to leave. And the thing is they brought them all in and they did a great job, but then they all left and all the geese just came back. So every now and then the truck, they'll like pull up and they'll just like open up the car door. Some border collie or something will jump out the back, they'll whistle, and it'll book it at full speed to the geese, run in a circle around it, and then stop and look at the handlers, and the handlers will whistle again, and it'll run around them again until they all fly away screaming, and then it will run back and be like, I did a good job. And also their website has bios for each individual dog of what they're good at and what they're not good at, and it's really, really freaking cute. But anyway, they're not helping. Like, they are helping short term, but the thing is they scare away the geese, and then the geese just fly to Lower Lake. And then they were like, well, that's sad. And then they just leave. And then the geese... Anyway, say what you have to say, because this is way more important than geese. Nothing is more important than geese. Okay, fair.
I think it's always important to regularly reflect on your own identities, marginalized and privileged ones. Internalized ableism, internalized racism, and own trauma, whether own personal trauma, family trauma, or generational trauma, all of that's hard to get rid of completely, and in a world that is constantly ableist, racist, and traumatizing. But it is still important to reflect on it, to not reaponize your own trauma on other people. Learn how to hold space, how to decenter yourself. How to listen to other people with marginalized identities you don't have, and sometimes they also hold ideas you disagree with, or even bigoted ideas. And it's important to hold nuance that, yes, they are not saints and they can mess up, but also, their lived experiences are important to listen to. All of that.
Weaponize. That's how that word is pronounced, apparently. That's why we both just kind of went, what? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So, do you have any final thoughts or I know that you like do cool things and might want to plug said cool things? Because other than writing, other than, what is your, I don't know enough about Tumblr to be like, what's your username or how that works. Other than helping me to write the Fact Fridays, Earl does much other things. That's how English works. I write on Tumblr, I rant on Tumblr. It's called 5,000 Loaves of Bread. Do you also want to listen? Everything that Earl does is somehow related to bread, and it's my favorite thing. You're just a loaf. You also have an Instagram. Yeah, I was about to say, do you want to advertise that? I will link these things in the description for you so that you can follow Earl on everything, because Earl's the best, and we love them, and I'm so glad to have you on my team. Even though half my Fact Fridays right now are very theater specific, and so I can't have your help on them, and it means that I am doing so much writing right now. Anyway, yes, correct.
And on Instagram it is called like bread loaves or something with underscores all over it.
I will find it and I will put it on the screen for you. But anyway, I'll just link it in the description. We'll figure it out.
I put some of my Tumblr writings on my website, but it is only a small selection, and I need to sit down and shove it all on there. It is called some bread loaves.
Something, I'll link in the description for you. Anyway, follow Earl on all of the things and stuff. Thank you so much for being here. I love and appreciate you. Thank you for your help and everything. Yeah, and also Mahaliuk Psychology Department, you should fear us. Just when I stop yelling at people and I graduate, it'll be your turn. Anyway, thank you for coming to watch this video. You're welcome to like, comment, subscribe, leave a super thanks, whatever brings you joy but no pressure. And as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for learning. Remember, it's never too late to start over. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Yeah, bye. I'm gonna throw this in at the end after we say goodbye. We're adding really giant eyeballs to the back of Earl's AAC device. I can help with the other. I have tweezers somewhere if we need to do that. I don't have nails. I'm too gay for this shit. Very good. Very good. Very good. And right here. Oh, he's beautiful. Okay, good. You're gonna show it off to the camera? We bedazzled it. It's wonderful. Yay! All right, have a good one. Bye.